at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio a journalist, Charles Ideho, and a public affairs analyst, Oladende Ario. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Morning. How are you?
Morning. All right, so let's look at the stories making the headlines in the Blueprint newspaper this morning. Xenophobic attacks. Ekweremadu takes case to global parliament. Another Nigerian killed, 2 others injured. It's destroying brotherhood, peace, and relationships. The Daily Trust is saying 5 months after inauguration, Ganduje, Buni, Wike, 5 others yet to appoint commissioners. Award multi-billion naira contract. Lawyers differ. The Daily Times says minimum wage. What will determine consequential increment, says Nigeria Governors Forum. Says states to discuss consequential adjustment with Labour Joint Negotiating Committee. Pledges commitment to counterpart resources to strengthen mass vaccination campaigns. That's in the Daily Times newspapers. Of course, we'll move to the News Direct. It says implementation of 30,000 naira minimum wage depends on states' capacity, says Governors Forum. The Vanguard says federal government can't dictate to states on minimum wage, says governors. And the Rider says states will pay according to capacity. And federal government started deduction of 614 billion naira bailout fund from states' accounts. Governors looking for trouble. We're ready for them, says TUC. All right, the Nation newspaper says here, governors reject federal government's wage pact with Labour. Negotiation to be based on resources. Union leaders threaten showdown. So we will stick with this story in the Nation and in the Vanguard newspaper. Of course, the minimum wage saga. Federal government can't dictate to states on minimum wage, says governors. And the Nation is saying governors reject federal government's wage pact with Labour. Gentlemen, this is a new development. Of course, we had these negotiations over time and we did not hear anything from the state governors. But at this point, we're having this discussion, this development now. What do you think of this matter?
Well, I expected it because that agreement was reached when, even when the news broke at that time, and we all heaved a sigh of relief that indeed there would be no more industrial action. Yeah. But state did not feature in the reports that came out. So I started expressing fear that we might be headed for a sector of, I mean, another level of dispute, which of course we have come to now. But I think on the one hand, I tend to agree with the states that the federal government cannot dictate to them on what to pay above the minimum wage, because minimum wage, as you know, is a constitutional issue. It's been accepted and agreed and has become an act that you can't pay less than 30,000 naira, which is statutorily agreed. But what to pay above it is what we now call the consequential adjustment. Okay. But the federal government does not have the right to dictate to states what they can pay above the 30,000 naira, because we run a federation, okay? So, and we run a 3 tiers of government. So the federal government has its own workers, the state has its own workers. So it will now depend on the financial might of the state to say, this is how much they can pay. So what I expect Labour to do is to go into negotiations with the respective states, or even as a group using the Nigerian Governors Forum, to agree on what it should be, so that we don't further strangulate states that can that can't pay. Because when we're even paying 18,000, most of them were even in arrears. Yeah. So to now talk, we are now placing additional burden upon them, which will not also go well for the economy. So I suppose rather than being activists and being unnecessarily hitting all the system, threatening to go on strike, I think they should just find a way to meet and then look at how they can mitigate these problems that are already upon us.
All right, Ladinde, let's have
you see, several things come to me in this. As much as federal government is empowered constitutionally to determine what should be the base, we must look at some other benchmarks. Number one, you must look at the minimum wage against what political office holders, what they earn. It's important because collectively, the civil service, the political office holders are appointed and elected. They're the ones we call government, effectively. Number two, the states are not equally empowered. okay, is it now they're just realizing that we're in a federation? If we must run a federation the way it should be run, they should be given the opportunity to decide their fate, negotiate with their different labor unions, and be more creative now.
Shouldn't that have come earlier when the federal government was negotiating
Again,
with labor?
it's a reflection of putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
They should have been a part of negotiation ordinarily, but that didn't happen. So at this point now, the states could be, the governors could be seen to be throwing spanner in the works, and that, like he said, it will be creating needless crisis. For me, let them be creative. If your workforce is too bloated, too large, I'm not saying you should retrench. Look for other areas where they can be deployed. Agric, for instance. Okay, we need a lot to do in the area of agric to ensure our food security. But that they should just be paid. Because you go to states and everywhere, you see drivers with no vehicles to drive, you see clerks and officers with no desk to even sit on in the first place. So what values are they adding? When you say employed, you must be employed in a way that you are adding value, not just collecting wages. No, you must be working for your pay. You must deserve your pay. So if they're not going to be able to accommodate them, don't push them into the labor market, onto the street. Push them into agric and other areas that could still be useful.
But let me quickly add, there's something he said about political office holders. I do agree that the political office holders in Nigeria, they are earning too far above what they should earn. When you bring that pari passu, when you bring that along the line of how much you are producing as well. But there's no way political office holder will not earn more than the civil servants. The reason is that the reason is that political office holders are contract. Their own appointment is contractual because they are tenured within 4 years. If you don't earn a return,
but is that a justification? Because
I said no. What I'm saying, what I wanted to remove from it is that I said I do agree that they are earning too much.
Okay.
But under normal circumstances, okay, the political office holders' pay will always be higher than that of the civil servant. Because they are contracted. Hold on, sir. Let me finish. You know why? Because they contract. Hold on, sir. Because they are contracted. Because these people are not supposed. They are tenured. They are not paid gratuity. They are not paid pension. So at the end of the day, after 4 years, if you don't earn a re-election, you don't come back. But the other one has to serve for about 35 years. And his tenure, he has.
But who suffers the burnt of the whole thing? Now we're talking about minimum wage.
No, I know. I just wanted to clear
I understand,
that
but from what you're saying, the civil servants are at the heat of the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, what I'm saying, all we need to do is instead of arguing that I agree that they are earning too much, but even if you want to say, okay, you want to rise size or whatever you want to do, there's no way a politician will not earn more than the civil servant. That's what I want you to know.
The issue is this: the cost of governance in Nigeria is needlessly excessive.
We both agree on that.
Okay, and then there is no way we will not compare what they are being paid with what the students are being paid. Okay, they are tenure, yes, contractual, okay, but there must be a reduction across the board whereby money can be freed for development. And you see, how can you now say a permanent secretary, for instance, okay, earning what he is earning, and the council chairman earns 3 times what the person is earning? All those things have to be looked into globally and universally. Otherwise, we will continue to have discontent in the system. And I keep wondering what was what the people at the RF Mark, what they had on their minds while fixing those humongous alongside salaries. There's no way we will not focus on that. It's in the system, and it's Nigeria, not outside this terrain. So for me, as Labour is taking it in its stride, whatever comes its way, they should, in the spirit of national service, agree to reduced allowances and salaries. That's the only way
the politicians? Oh, yes. They are not like
we might not see that happen, but the thing is that at this point that we are in now, Labour will have to negotiate with different states.
That's
so,
right.
what should Labour do? Because one state might be able to pay, Another state might not be able
okay,
to pay,
now,
and the other
the
states, labor unions might want to.
endowed
Yes,
financially.
I agree.
Yes,
I
but
agree
is industrial action the way to go?
No,
for
industrial
that?
action is not the way.
I've
It's
told
not.
you they should
It's
be
not.
creative.
Because if you also embark on industrial action, you are further reducing the strength of the economy to even be able to pay the money. But you are going to be shutting down the machinery of government. You're going to be shutting down the economy. So what I expect them to do is that maybe collectively, as I said, they can raise, they all have their union. So they can meet with the NGF, okay, collectively, and see how they can mitigate this problem, as I said earlier, so that we don't have to go over the whole problem.
A quick one.
They should be thinking of moving excess workforce
into different sectors,
agriculture, whatever.
Okay,
but they still need to be paid.
They can be creatively done.
They still need to be paid.
No, they will be going more into productive and investment end.
All right,
if that can be done with the labor, it will make good sense. So there won't be any crisis anywhere.
Will you go to the farm if you were one?
I'm a farmer.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We have to edit at this point. Thank you so much for talking to us on all of these issues now.
Rest of the show.
Yeah.
Thank you, David, for bringing us details in business. Well, it's time now to take a look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio a journalist, Charles Idaho, and a public affairs analyst, Oladende Ario. Good morning, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good to see you this morning. All right, we head straight to the papers, and I begin with the blueprint. Xenophobic attacks. Ekwere Madu takes case to global parliament. Another Nigerian killed, others injured. It's destroying brotherhood, peace, relationships. We'll be looking at that story shortly. And to the front page of the Daily Trust, 5 months after inauguration, Ganduje, Buni, Wike, 5 others yet to appoint commissioners, award multi-billion naira contracts, lawyers differ. To the front page of the Daily Times, now minimum wage, what will determine consequential increments? The Governors Forum speaking there says states to discuss consequential adjustment with Labour Joint Negotiating Committee, pledges commitment to counterpart resources to strengthen mass vaccination campaigns. On the front page of News Direct, implementation of 30,000 naira minimum wage depends on states' capacity, Governors Forum. Well, to the front page of the Vanguard now, federal government can't dictate to states on minimum wage. Governors says states will pay according to capacity. Federal government started deduction of 614 billion naira bailout funds from states' accounts. Governors looking for trouble. We are ready for them. TUC. And to the front page of The Nation, governors reject federal government's wage pact with Labour. Negotiation to be based on resources. Union leaders threaten showdown. Well, gentlemen, let's head back to the story on the front page of the blueprint, talking about xenophobic attacks. Former Deputy President of the Senate, that's Ekwere Madu, at the International Parliament for Tolerance and Peace, spoke about the xenophobic attacks in Africa, and he is seeking immediate intervention from the bodies there. But when you look at this issue of xenophobic attacks critically, we remember, or we would recall, that our president, that's President Muhammadu Buhari, was in South Africa earlier in October, where he went to have an engagement with the president of South Africa, Ramaphosa. And yet we saw the attacks. Questions have been asked. This meeting, what really was it about?
It's a potpourri of reasons. If we have to look at the fact that our people were going to find means of livelihood in an enclave that was dependent, on us for survival.
Well, migration has been
a global
phenomenon.
I'm not saying no. But you see, there's a saying in Yoruba that you don't go overseas when you are comfortable at home. For me, the starting point is, why are people going to an enclave where they are not desired, where they are not safe, where their presence is not welcome? Okay? Now, all of those killing, burning their business centers, and attacking them openly, they were a build-up, from somewhere. one would have thought that with all the hue and cry that followed the last unfortunate incident would have been abated. But missing, and very painfully for me, was the voice of African Union.
Yes.
They were very lethargic and passive in all of these things. And one would have expected that, okay, they should have come out to say something that will have impact. This again goes to show that our so-called Big Brother and Giant of Africa image is aroused. They have no respect for us again.
Really?
For me, I'm not going to be part of people saying, oh, they should go and beg them or impose whatever on them. No.
Who should beg who?
We should begin to go and beg South African people and look for peace at all
That
costs.
obviously is not working because the
Exactly.
South African delegates came to Nigeria to apologize.
Peace sake. Okay, the president came here. Before he came, he sent a powerful delegation to come here and convey their regrets. Notwithstanding, this still continued. I would simply say, let our governments at all levels get their games together so that people can come back home instead of their lives being wasted and threatened.
All right.
Wherever. It doesn't make for personal growth and development.
Charles, there was something he said, and I want you to critically look at it. Is this because our Big Brother figure is no longer what it is, or it is something more to it? Because, right, the allegation has been that Nigerians are taking up the jobs. But when you look at when there are crises, what is being destroyed are menial jobs. These are not blue-collar jobs that you see is being destroyed. I wonder, is it because of our figure? How does that come to play, really?
No, I think we have to rejig our foreign policy. At the heart of this is the way we are driving our foreign policy. You don't have a foreign policy that will be advantageous to other countries and disadvantageous to the domestic affairs at home. Now, as he's talking about the Yoruba day that says that your home cannot be good and you're going abroad, no. People will always have a reason. Even
to move.
Okay, in China's economy is booming, but you have
a
preponderance of Chinese population here in Nigeria. So there will always be...
They have to find jobs for their...
No, what I'm saying, there will always be a reason for people to migrate. Okay, it's not because of economic... It could be economic reason, it could be political, it could be social. What about tourism? What about tourism? That makes people go around and then invest in other countries on a tourism basis. So what we should need to do, as I said, we need to rejig our foreign policy. One, the Big Brother status he's talking about, which is not working at all, is for us to put our foot down. I will not forget to always go back to the example of 2014 that when Jonathan was president. We had a similar case in Zimbabwe, when Zimbabwe was threatening to seize the businesses, the micro businesses of Nigerians over there, and send them away. So when the Nigerian community in Zimbabwe cried out, what they now did was that they sent for an envoy here in Nigeria to look at it. They said, no problem. What they did was to do a proper profiling of Zimbabweans here in Nigeria. They found that we had up to about 18,000 Zimbabweans that were in the macro sector of the economy. Any money and then repatriating same work. Then when they did the profiling of Nigerians in Zimbabwe that were even doing all this micro business, they were just about 2,000. Oh, then the government said, no problem, we return ours, we return yours. Zimbabwe shut up. Till today, have you ever heard of anything Zimbabwe against Nigerians? So we must look at how do we now treat this South African problem. It's like a salt tomb as we have now.
Absolutely.
Look, when you look at the South African investment in Nigeria, it's quite high. We don't have so much over there. Yeah. We need to look at that. There's a way you can hurt a country. They think we pay them over there, and they come out begging. So, but when we're able to leverage on that as we speak, so that is why South Africa has a way to speak in our faces. He
is different from your position now in terms of hurting the country.
Hurting the economy.
The economy.
Yes. When they looted Shoprite here, I was against it.
Yes.
And I told them, what you are doing, you are looting Nigerians' investments. 1/2, you are sending Nigerians out of employment.
Jobs.
Okay? So at that level, we shouldn't be looking in that direction.
No, you may not. Please, Ariel, let me so that I don't get misunderstood. Now, when I mention, I'm not saying, there are investments that are owned by that are about, maybe a Nigerian only own 1% in that investment. All you need to do is that the trade agreement, for instance, now, do you know to renew your visa over there in South Africa is very cumbersome.
Of course.
So we can look at all those people who are coming.
There are areas we can look
look
into.
at those documentation. That's what I'm talking about. So if they find it incredibly difficult for them to come over here, or even to have even up to about 50%,
won't we be at the losing end?
I'm not talking about looting. I'm talking about looting. No,
won't we be at the losing end?
You see, the bulk of the companies doing well today in Nigeria are foreign companies. And if you try to take a census of them, apart from the Chinese, the bulk of them are South African companies. So for me, in using trade as a weapon of war here now, care must be taken.
Absolutely.
I would rather a political dimension or solution should be sought and which will be effective.
In what
which
way?
Is?
In what way?
Which is?
Wait now.
No, say it.
No, because there's no time.
When I said it then that the president had no business in South Africa at that time, people didn't understand. They should have brought the issues to the table at the ministerial level and then signed a joint paper accord or whatever and then follow it.
There was an agreement for early warning systems.
Yes, unfortunately, the government of South Africa, they are not doing enough to protect our investment, our people, and to drum it into the head of their people that, hey, these are our brothers. They have a right to live anywhere in the world.
Charles,
yes, we talk of labor mobility.
Look, 2 years ago, if you recall,
quickly,
we talk of
2 years ago, the president came
mobility.
here.
I'm not against it.
Sorry. 2 years ago, the president of South Africa, Joseph Zuma, was forced to come to Nigeria. What did they come to do? To come and negotiate when there was a threat about a fine, about a heavy fine placed upon a country that's owned by South Africa. The president was forced to come over here to negotiate. That has been able to solve that. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying loot. There's a way you can look at documentation, and the thing will force them on their knees.
All right, gentlemen. Charles Ndeho, Olade Ndeario. Thank you so much for your contribution on this matter.
It's time to take a look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio a journalist, Charles Ndeho, and a public affairs analyst, Olade Ndeario. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, let's look at the newspapers this morning. Of course, we'll start with the Blueprint newspaper. It says, xenophobic attacks. Ekweremadu takes case to global parliament. Another Nigerian killed, 2 others injured. It's destroying brotherhood, peace, relationships. That's in the Blueprint newspaper this morning. The Daily Trust is saying here, 5 months after inauguration, Ganduje, Buni, Wike, 5 others yet to appoint commissioners. Award multi-billion naira contracts. Lawyers differ. That's in the Daily Trust this morning. So the Daily Times is saying here, minimum wage, what will determine consequential income increment, says NGF. The writer says here, says states to discuss consequential adjustments with Labour Joint Negotiating Committee, pledges commitment to counterpart resources to strengthen mass vaccination campaigns. The News Direct says implementation of 30,000 naira minimum wage depends on states' capacity, says Governors Forum. The Vanguard is talking about the minimum wage as well. Federal government can't dictate to states on minimum wage, says Governors. That's in the Vanguard newspaper. Says states will pay according to capacity. And federal government started deduction of 614 billion naira bailout funds from state accounts. Governors looking for trouble. Who are ready for them, says TUC. The Nation newspaper is saying here, of course, the minimum wage. Governors reject federal government's wage pact with Labour. Negotiation to be based on resources. Union leaders threaten showdown. That's in the Nation newspaper. So we will stick with the story in the Daily Trust newspaper. And it's talking about the governors that have yet to appoint commissioners 5 months after inauguration. Governor Ganduje, Buni, Wike, 5 others yet to appoint commissioners. Award multi-billion naira contracts. Lawyers differ. Commissioners have not yet been appointed in these states, and contracts have been awarded.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, what's your say?
Well, it's not the first time. If you remember, the phenomenon, I will call it, was pioneered by Ralph Aregbesola in Osun State.
Okay.
For 2 years or so.
For
almost the first time.
I knew
it
it exceeded 1 year. And then when he was asked why, he said the economy wasn't doing well. He didn't have the fund to pay political appointees. That he would rather use the money
that was genuine enough
to deliver value to the people. He gave a valid reason, and you cannot query that. The question is, this crowd that you have mentioned.
About 8 governors now.
Yeah. You want to ask why. Again, they've been awarding contracts and all of that. Are they dispensing fully now with commissioners? Or are they saying that they can carry the can all alone? Again, going forward to award massive contracts of that magnitude, for me, it doesn't gel. I think that should be a part of our law now that will stipulate the time lag between when you are sworn in and then when your aides, commissioners, SA and co must come on board. Otherwise, this thing will be open to abuse. And I can tell you that behind this is political underpinning of who will be appointed from which district.
Possibly that might be the problem that
exactly,
is
but
bedeviling this.
it's not helping their workings. Because if the offices are not required, there won't have been provision for them.
All right, Charles, now with this development, now how does it affect the economy of those states?
No, it's not about the economy, first of all. The appointment of a cabinet members is a constitutional provision. So that's why when we were talking about Areboshala's argument may have been plausible at that time, but it wasn't expedient when you look at the letters of the law. In the federal level, you form a cabinet by having ministers. The state level, you form a cabinet by having commissioner. It is a provision, it's a constitutional provision that you cannot shy away from. Okay? So, and the case is actionable in court. If anybody takes that, the governors will not be able to win that case, no matter how plausible their argument. Because the constitution has envisaged that the governor needs help. That's why he has to form a cabinet. We didn't, the template was inherited from where democracy was practiced abroad. I mean, abroad, whatever. We are practicing the United States type of democracy as against the parliament. Even parliamentary, they also have a cabinet. Yeah. When Boris Johnson came, he had a cabinet, right? So it is we cannot operate a government without a cabinet. That is what the governors are attempting to do. No matter how much argument they fly here and there, it can't stand in the law of court.
Okay, but you said it's a constitutional requirement.
It is.
So how long are we supposed to wait?
No, okay, the constitution is silent on the timeline, which is what Ari is saying.
That's a weakness.
That's a weakness.
But if a governor does it and he does not form a cabinet in his entire, maybe first term, they are tenure for 4 years, I think that thing is actionable in court. It is actionable in court. But who goes to court? Because political reasons will also, if you go there now, you might be vilified or so.
But that's some lawyers might go to court, but does it stand the test of time?
No, it will stand. Look, if we have not tested that aspect of our status book, it just requires for someone to go to court and test it. And all these things will be put to an end. Because I don't even imagine where the Constitution has said you need a cabinet to help you work out. What you have now is the bureaucracy, which is, of course, led by the civil service. Yeah. But the civil service will need supervisory the headship, which is where the commissioner will come in. Commissioner of Finance will now supervise the permanent secretary of all of it. So you cannot operate a government without a cabinet. That is what they attempt to do, and it is in negation of it's illegal. It is.
Okay, Charles. Yes. Can we go and sue?
Oh, you can start. I can start.
Yeah, but you see, my state is not there.
Start.
My state is not there.
It doesn't have to be your state.
Oh, you mean I can go and sue?
Yeah, because you know why? Now? Because we are looking at this is about the nation. It's about the nation. We're looking for national interest. It's not your state interest. If you are a stakeholder as a Nigerian and you are saying this, what is happening is an anomaly and it's an aberration that should not be also allowed to fester,
but what I'm saying is this: I'm Lagos based.
Okay.
I pay my taxes in Lagos. Now, if I should not go and sue Ganduje or Wiki, for instance, I didn't vote for them. Just wait. I didn't vote for them, and I would be wrong to see myself as a stakeholder.
Okay, but the news is coming to the national level.
In those states, yes.
Yeah. Right?
I understand. Don't you think the court will throw away my cause? I mean, throughout
No, it needs to be tested. Okay, let the court decide whether you don't have
local standard. Okay.
Then we'll not argue that as a point. But we see, laws don't just exist on the basis of existence. They need to be tested so that you can blend the letters of the law and the spirit of the law. I mean, these are the things we need to blend together.
But talking sincerely, don't you think there must be a machinery that should guarantee that constitutional appointments, okay, or offices specified by the constitutions are filled as may be prescribed and appropriate?
No, that one, the law would not ask you.
In that direction.
No, the law will not say. The law will not say in Edo, for instance,
but I'm saying,
or in Lagos, will not say you must bring 2 people from Awori, 2 people from.
No, that's not what I'm saying. You're saying, okay, if you are sworn in June 12 or wherever.
Okay, time
frame.
Okay, good.
There must be a time frame. And say within 90 days, we must fill the following offices or the cabinet or whatever.
What we see all around the world is immediately a president is sworn
within 24 hours, a president appointed, released
okay,
the
but
cabinet
over
member.
there, you no interest here in Nigeria. The interest you have a flows, in our bloodstream.
In any case,
okay?
don't forget that we were already complaining about Mr. President too. No,
6 months
on time.
I mean, from May to October.
So the problem will be copying him. Or what do you think?
But even if the copying, but it still doesn't make it right.
I have never said
it's a negation of the Constitution.
I'm only saying that he laid the precedent.
But we can stop it.
Well, okay.
A lady president doesn't mean all of us have to now queue behind him and be doing what is wrong.
Even if we decide to make it a law, who's going to enforce all of this? Who's going to ensure that this doesn't happen again?
No, as he said, if we go to court and if we win, the judiciary will declare, give them a given time frame and say, like they do for election. You know, when they cancel any election, they tell INEC to conduct election within a given time frame. Exactly. The same thing can be done in this regard.
If you go to court and you don't win this case, because there's been no...
No, it can be appealed.
Okay.
At
all levels now.
It can be appealed until we get to the highest.
At all levels now. There's never been a case like this in court.
No, it's never. No, we have to have a precedent. That's what they call a precedent. We have to have a precedent.
Don't be surprised if you see it in the news tomorrow that Charles and I have sued these governors, and I'm serious.
They will not say what's our business, what's our interest.
That's my fear.
It's our interest because we're Nigerian.
It's not to sue. Okay. Seriously. But if they say, okay, you don't live in Kano, I don't live in Rivers State.
After this session, let's go and think how to do about this.
I think we'll have to stop at that now.
I mean, let's lay
the example.
Yeah, so we must, a precedent has to be set.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for talking to us on all of these matters. Now,